the Houston Texans, the Indianapolis Colts, AFC South rivals playing for the third time this season on Wild Card Weekend. You could almost call this a AFC South championship game. But my question is, who is better? Who is the more talented roster? It's Mitch of TheBottomLineView here to answer that exact question. If you're new to the Bottom Line View and this series, we take a look at every position and evaluate both teams' talent. Then I come to a decision by tallying the score. This is not a prediction video of who will win the game. We have other videos for that on this channel. This is purely a judgment of talent and who the more talented roster is. Before I dive into the depth chart, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL vids like this, and Gronk Spike the like button. Also, let me know in the comments below, who do you think is the more talented team? Will Deshaun Watson become a playoff legend, or will Andrew Luck defeat the Texans once again? Let's start this video off with the most important position on the football field. It's Andrew Luck versus Deshaun Watson, the two franchise stars, the two faces of the franchise. And I personally am going to go with Andrew Luck here. I think Andrew Luck is a more experienced, poised, and composed quarterback right now in the NFL. Deshaun Watson, still very talented. He has a better ability to run, escape pressure, and throw on the run. But Andrew Luck from the pocket maneuvers that pocket and delivers the ball down the field with such great accuracy. It's hard not to go with him. Luck is a warrior in the pocket, and he's also a great leader. Both of these quarterbacks are great leaders, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what Deshaun Watson can do in the playoffs, being that he was so clutch in his college career and now he's bringing it to the NFL. But to me, Andrew Luck was a true MVP candidate with 39 touchdowns on the season and 4,593 yards total. Deshaun Watson had a good season as well, but doesn't quite measure up to Andrew Luck. So I'm going to go with the Colts, Andrew Luck. But both teams have great quarterbacks. At the running back position, it's basically the trio of Colts backs versus Lamar Miller. The Texans do also use a couple of other running backs like Alfred Blue and Dante Foreman, but really they mostly just use Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller was basically the bell cow for the Texans this season with 973 yards, a 4.6 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns on the ground, and also 25 catches. But when you look at the Colts running game, I think a lot of this also has to do with their offensive line and how good their offensive line is. But Marlon Mack was superb this year. He had a breakout year. Not a lot of people have talked about how good Marlon Mack has been. 908 yards, 4.7 yards per carry, 9 touchdowns, and 17 catches. You also then throw in a guy like Nyheim Hines, who has 63 catches on the season, and then you have that dual threat of a power back, a shifty back in Hines, and you also throw in Wilkins, who's averaging 5.6 yards per carry and 336 yards on the season. I like the trio of the Colts a little bit better than I do Lamar Miller, Alfred Blue, and company. At the wide receiver position, another close one, because these two teams are basically made off of one star receiver and not a ton of depth. When you look at the Colts, they have T.Y. Hilton, who has absolutely punished the Houston Texans in every game he's ever played, basically. If you look up the top 10 games for receivers against the Texans, I think T.Y. Hilton's there probably about half the time. He has 76 catches, 1,270 yards on the season, and 6 touchdowns. While DeAndre Hopkins is a great receiver, don't get me wrong, and I'd take him over a lot of receivers in this league, I think the depth of the Colts is slightly better, and because T.Y. Hilton does go off against the Texans, I'm going to give the slight edge to the Colts. Now, if Will Fuller and Demaryius Thomas were playing, this would be a no-question debate to the Texans, because Kiki Cote, he's pretty good as well. 28 catches, 287 yards, and 1 touchdown. He's been injured a lot, and he had a great game against the Colts the first time around when he was there to play. But honestly, I think Hilton, Inman, Rogers, Grant, they have a few more names. After the top two for the Texans, they don't really have much depth at this position, and you're struggling to really name these guys off the top of your head, and they're mostly practice squatters. So for me, Inman catching 28 passes, Rogers catching a surprising 53, and Grant also catching 35 passes. Is just a more well-rounded supporting cast behind their star receiver. So I'm going to go with the Colts at wide receiver. And at the tight end position, this is a pretty clear one for the Colts. Eric Ebron came out of nowhere this year to have a breakout season for the Colts. 13 touchdowns this season. That's only 4 away from the record that Rob Gronkowski set in 2011. He had an awesome year. Now, the yards weren't quite the same, 750 yards on 66 catches, but he's made numerous big plays down the field, and Andrew Luck loves to hit him on mismatches and seams down the middle of the field. Now, Thomas for the Texans is a promising rookie, 4 touchdowns on the season, but I just don't think he measures up to Eric Ebron, who's been a true weapon for the Colts at tight end. And to finish out the offensive categories, the offensive line is clearly going to the Colts. The Colts this season had a top 5 offensive line every way you look at it. Costanzo is a stud at left tackle, and he's been their best lineman for years now. I don't think he is right now, but since getting Quentin Nelson, he's been the best lineman they've had for a number of years with Andrew Luck. Quentin Nelson is the next great guard in the NFL. He's already top 3 at his position. Braden Smith has done a really good job, and if it weren't for Quentin Nelson, you'd be talking about Braden Smith as one of the best offensive lineman rookies, this past season. He needs to be discussed more, in my opinion. And then you have Glowinski, who's 10th on Pro Football Focus at the guard position, and also Kelly at center, who is coming back from injury, but he should also help the Colts with their offensive line and specifically their run game. So the Colts offensive line is special. It's really good, and it's going to be good for years to come. Houston's offensive line is their big struggle point. They are not good along the offensive line. Nick Martin is their top-rated guy in Pro Football Focus, 21st overall at his position of center. Other than that, Clemente has been a backup for his entire career. Fulton hasn't measured up to what they expected him to be since coming over. And really, their tackles are huge struggle points for this team. Deshaun Watson just doesn't have enough time to pass, and Davenport really struggles to protect on that left side. I don't love the Texans offensive line, and this could be the biggest advantage of any category amongst these different positions. Then we head to the defensive side, where it shifts more to Houston. You look at the Houston front 7 specifically, and it's really good. It's amongst the tops in the league, and it helps to have a guy like J.J. Watt in your interior defensive line. He's one of the best defensive players I've ever seen in my entire life, and he continues to do it at an elite level after a lot of people question him coming back this season. You look at Reeder, who's a big run stuffer for them and is a big reason why they're so good against the run. And also Covington has had a little bit better of a season this year than he has in the past. You look at the Colts, though, they're not totally outmanned at this position. I really look at a guy like Marcus Hunt, who I like a lot. He can rush the passer a little bit better than a lot of interior linemen. Autry as well is a well-built defensive lineman. He's kind of a little bit smaller than a traditional nose tackle or D tackle, but he definitely can do a lot of different things, and there's versatility with these guys up front in the interior for the Colts. So the Colts aren't totally outmanned, but you look at J.J. Watt, Reeder, and Covington, and it's just hard not to give them this category. You look at the edge position, and I'm going with the Texans as well, because J.J. Watt also plays this position, but mostly looking at Jadeveon Clowney, Whitney Merciless. These two guys are beasts off the edge, specifically Jadeveon Clowney. Jadeveon Clowney does not get the respect he deserves for the absolute play wrecker he is. Whether that's run game, pass game, he doesn't always show up in the statistics, whether that's sacks or stuff like that, but he always disrupts offenses with his pure speed and power combination, and Clowney is dangerous off that edge. Merciless has had a down year, but he's still quite solid from the edge as a pass rusher. J.J. Watt is also thrown in there as well. When you look at the Colts, Jabal Sheard has been a solid player ever since coming from the Browns, then to the Patriots, winning a Super Bowl with the Patriots, and now as a Colt over the last couple of years. He's really been their top guy as an edge rusher. Muhammad is also a solid guy. He's a little bit bigger than Sheard, and he's better against the run, but Sheard is a pure pass rusher. And they just like to move these guys around. They also have Lewis as well. But the edge position overall is Clowney, Watt, Merciless. This is just too tough to go against. It's arguably the best edge position in the entire NFL, so I'm going with the Texans. At the linebacker position, this is very close because you look at Leonard for the Colts, who's been, my opinion, the defensive rookie of the year and has put up superb stats. And you look at McKinney, who's more of an underrated player, doesn't quite have those statistics, but very close. McKinney did make the Pro Bowl for the AFC. And it comes down to the second guy. Cunningham and Walker are very close to me. I am going to go with the Texans here. I know I'm going to get some backlash in the comment section, but I think the combination of McKinney and Cunningham are a little bit better. They're a little bit more experienced. They're a little bit more savvy, and they fit their scheme very well as more 3-4 inside backers. Leonard and Walker is a little bit weak. He's kind of a worse version of Leonard. He's fast, he's athletic, but he does kind of chase the football a lot. He's just not a very aware player, but he does have a lot of athleticism, while Cunningham and McKinney are very smart inside linebackers, and they can diagnose the play a lot better, in my opinion. So I'm going to go with the Texans. It's very close, but this is maybe the closest position, but I'm going to go with the Texans. At the safety position, I am also going with the Texans. The Texans do have Tyrann Mathieu, which in my opinion is a big difference maker in this category. Malik Hooker is ranked 12th overall by Pro Football Focus, especially in coverage. He makes plays. But looking at Tyrann Mathieu, all he can do in the back end of this defense, he's really improved just their ability to do a lot of different things, send a lot of different blitzes, cover at corner if need be, play linebacker a little bit. He's done a lot of different things for them. He's even played deep safety, which he didn't previously for the Cardinals. So Mathieu is just kind of this jack of all trades that I really like for the Texans. Their rookie Reed has been really good, ranking 24th overall by Pro Football Focus. He has a ton of speed. He has a lot of range to cover deep passes. So I like the Texans safety combination, but I think the Colts safety combination is one to look out for in the future. At cornerback, I am going to go with the Texans. Now, this is the weakest position for me on both football teams. Now, when you look at the statistics, the Colts are better as a pass defense. They rank 16th. The Texans are pretty bad. They rank 28th. But by comparing it to the Pro Football Focus rankings, Jackson and Joseph are both top 12 corners, and the top guy is Desir for the Colts, who ranks 18th. Overall, though, the reason I went with it was that the Texans can do a little bit more with their corners. There's one thing to be said about scheme and pass defense and playing man and playing zone, but the Texans can do a lot, and they ask a lot of their corners. They ask a lot of Jonathan Joseph at his old age. They ask a lot of Kareem Jackson as tacklers in open space, one-on-one. And more the Colts, they kind of protect their corners. They play a lot of zone. They play about 93 to 95% zone. Well, when I look at the Texans, their corners can do a lot more, and they can play man, they can play zone. They're very aware. They make plays tackling. And I just think the Colts corners are a little bit unproven in this playoff situation. While they've played very well and they've played above their head and above their skill level, they still don't quite measure up to me to the Texans corner. So I'm going to go with the Texans here. At the kicker position, it's obvious. It's Adam Vinatieri. He's the greatest kicker of all time, in my personal opinion. And when it comes to playoffs, I would not pick any kicker over Adam Vinatieri, and that includes Justin Tucker. At special teams, I'm going with the Texans. This is very difficult, but the Texans punter, I think, has been a little bit better than Sanchez of the Colts. Daniel of the Texans has been a little bit better in terms of average per punt, pinning teams back deep. And then when looking at the coverage units and looking at the returners, neither team has great returners. Their coverage units are average. So it was a difficult one. Neither of these teams are going to win the game with their special teams, but the punter for the Texans slightly better. So that's why I went with the Texans. At the head coach position, I am going with the Colts. Now, Bill O'Brien has had more experience in the playoffs. He's also had 1 or 2 playoff wins. But Frank Reich has won a Super Bowl as a coordinator in Philadelphia. He was a huge part of that Philadelphia Eagles offense and the reason why they were so good. He's also been a Coach of the Year candidate this year. So with the hot streak, with the experience as a coordinator, I have to give the edge to Frank Reich over Bill O'Brien. I think both coaches are good. I think Bill O'Brien is specifically good as a leader, as a guy that can motivate his players. For Frank Reich, I think he's better at scheming. That's why I'm going to go with the Colts here at the head coach position. The Colts are better on offense. The Texans are better on defense. I think the Colts are slightly closer in terms of talent on defense than the Texans are closer to the Colts on offense. I think the biggest, widest margin in talent is offensive line for the Colts. And I think the Colts also win a couple of key categories like quarterback, head coach, kicker. So I'm going to go with the Colts here as the better overall, more talented team. Let me know who you guys think is the more talented team, as well as letting me know who you think will win this wildcard matchup in the AFC. Thanks for joining me once again here on the Bottom Line View. It's Mitch. Gronk, spike that like button and subscribe for more NFL. Peace out.